After my parents demanded that I put my own life on hold to fully support my brother's recovery, I did exactly what they asked, stood by him every step of the way, even as he spiraled all the way down to rock bottom. Returning home from my daughter's dance recital, I discovered my bedroom safe gaping open. My grandmother's entire jewelry collection, including her wedding pearls and my grandfather's war ring, valued at approximately $18,000, had vanished. I let out a weary sigh, pinching the bridge of my nose. Earlier that morning, my brother Trent had been at the house for our customary Sunday breakfast. Trent, to put it mildly, was a 30-year-old man-child. Unemployed, spending his days coaxing more money from our parents, a complete burden. So, standing there, gazing at the empty safe, I immediately knew who was responsible. An hour later, I confronted Trent at his apartment. He was engrossed in a game of Fortnite, casually sporting Grandpa's ring as if it were a trophy. Insurance will cover it. He chuckled when I demanded the items back. Besides, what's some old jewelry compared to your baby brother's well-being? I attempted to explain that Grandma had specifically intended the pearls for the eldest granddaughter, but he merely shrugged, suggesting I could purchase new ones with my substantial nursing income. The pervasive scent of various substances in his apartment made me lightheaded. I left and drove to my parents' house. The moment the front door opened, my father punched a hole in the drywall. Trent already informed us what transpired. How dare you invade his apartment and threaten him during his recovery? My mother's reaction was even harsher, labeling me heartless for attacking Trent while he was vulnerable. They insisted I apologize. It was then that a thought struck me. The most satisfying revenge is often presented with a smile. So, I departed and began my mission. Over the next 2 weeks, I visited every pawn shop within a 50-mile radius. Some of my grandmother's pieces had already been sold, but I tracked down the buyers via social media, approached them directly, and offered triple their purchase price. I spent $18,000 from my retirement fund to retrieve everything, convinced my scheme would be entirely worthwhile. Our annual family dinner was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Aunts, uncles, cousins, over 30 relatives filled my parents' home. I waited until everyone was seated before gently tapping my fork against a champagne glass. Trent, I announced, ensuring every relative could hear. Since you inadvertently took all of Grandma's jewelry from my safe and pawned it, I decided to retrieve it all, just for you. Here is everything, professionally cleaned and restored. The silence was profound. Trent's face cycled from pale to crimson, but he couldn't erupt. Not with Aunt Linda's sharp inquiry about why I had to reclaim family heirlooms from pawn shops. Not with Uncle Rob muttering about addiction and theft. Life felt incredibly sweet. However, on the drive home, a realization dawned on me. Perhaps my vindictiveness shouldn't overshadow my role as a supportive sister. The following morning, driven by a pang of guilt, I drove him to the state's premier rehabilitation facility and invested $30,000 in a 90-day program, the kind featuring equine therapy, private rooms, and genuine medical supervision. I visited every single Sunday, enduring a 3-hour drive each way. Unfortunately, the counselor's constant praise for me seemed to intensify Trent's resentment. Yet, I believed rehab would help him. When he was discharged after 90 days, he was different, but not in a positive way. He would drive by my house at odd hours. I'd catch glimpses of his car. He somehow knew my routine, when I'd be at work, when I picked up my daughter. But I wasn't concerned, as he had never harmed my daughter before, and I didn't believe he ever would. 3 weeks later, it was time for Emma's school spring musical. I was helping her unfasten her seatbelt when the world suddenly erupted in flashing lights and blaring sirens. 20 officers, weapons drawn, commanded, "Hands where we can see them. Step away from the vehicle." Emma began screaming. They forced me to the ground on the asphalt while my 6-year-old watched her mother, whom she believed capable of moving mountains, lying face down next to the car. The K-9 unit went directly to my trunk, locating a hidden compartment I hadn't even known existed, and retrieved 3 small baggies. As I lay there, gravel digging into my cheek, my daughter shrieked, "Mommy, what's happening to Mommy?" That's when I spotted him, Trent, sitting in his car at the far end of the parking lot, simply observing, ensuring his anonymous tip had yielded the exact desired outcome. My hands were wrenched behind my back, cold metal biting into my wrists as the handcuffs clicked shut. The officer's knee pressed harder into my spine, grinding me deeper into the asphalt. Emma's screams became hysterical, the lyrics from Tomorrow, her solo from the musical, pouring out between sobs. Her red sequined Annie costume reflected every police light, transforming my child into a shimmering beacon of terror. Jake vomited. I heard him retching in the back seat, choking on his own panic. My 9-year-old son, who had been so eager to watch his sister perform, was now witnessing his mother pinned face down on the pavement, surrounded by armed officers. They hauled me to my feet. Through the pandemonium, I met Trent's gaze one last time. He raised his phone, recording everything. Then, he started his car and drove away. Mission accomplished. The ride to the station blurred with Emma's muffled sobs and Jake's unanswered questions. Child Services met us there. 2 women with clipboards who led my children away while I was processed. Emma reached for me, still singing broken fragments of Tomorrow like a prayer. At booking, I immediately recognized the desk sergeant, Tom Morrison. He had been 2 years ahead of Trent in high school. They had played football together. His face fell when he saw me. Sarah, he kept his voice low, professional, but I detected the disappointment. Your uncle is going to be heartbroken. My uncle, the sheriff, who had been so proud when I became a nurse, who had boasted about having one good apple in the family tree. Tom processed my fingerprints with visible reluctance, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. They granted me 1 phone call. My parents' landline rang 4 times before connecting to their antiquated answering machine. Dad's gruff voice invited callers to leave a message. I gripped the receiver with trembling fingers. Mom, Dad, it's Sarah. I've been arrested. It's not true. None of it's true. Trent planted substances in my car. Please, I need you to get the kids from Child Services. Please answer. Please. The machine cut me off mid-play. They placed me in a holding cell with 2 intoxicated drivers and a woman who had assaulted her boyfriend with a frying pan. When they heard my charges, possession with intent to distribute in a school zone, the atmosphere shifted. The drivers edged away. The domestic abuser sneered. Substance dealer picking up kids at school. Real classy. I sat on the metal bench, knees drawn to my chest, replaying every moment. The hidden compartment. How long had it been there? When had Trent installed it during one of his drive-bys while I was at work? 2 hours later, Emma's principal arrived at the station, not to assist. Mrs. Henderson's face was stony as she conversed with the officers, gesticulating sharply. I caught fragments through the reinforced glass, banned from school property, pending investigation, safety of other children. Even if I made bail, I couldn't pick up my own children from school, couldn't attend parent-teacher conferences, couldn't watch Emma in another play. My court-appointed lawyer appeared at midnight, fresh out of law school, his suit too large, his hands shaking more than mine as he fumbled with his briefcase. He spread out papers, pointing to figures that made my stomach churn. The amount they found in the hidden compartment puts you in trafficking weight. Mandatory minimums. We're talking decades, not years. His voice cracked on decades. This young man, who should be worried about student loans, was explaining how I might not see freedom until Emma was older than I was now. But I didn't know about the compartment. I didn't put anything there. He adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit. Doesn't matter. It's your car. Possession is possession. And in a school zone, the judge won't have discretion, even if he wanted to. Arraignment commenced at 3 a.m. They marched me into a courtroom that reeked of stale coffee and despair. The gallery was mostly empty, save for the back row. Trent sat there, phone out, filming again, ensuring he captured every moment of my downfall. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, read the charges: possession with intent to distribute, school zone enhancement, child endangerment. Each word, another nail in my coffin. When she addressed bail, my lawyer's arguments proved futile. Given the defendant's access to minor children and the location of the arrest, I'm denying bail. Defendant poses a risk to the community, particularly minor children. The gavel descended like thunder. Back at county jail, the medical intake nurse went through her checklist with practiced indifference: emergency contacts, medical conditions, current medications. When she inquired about someone to notify regarding my children, I had no alternative. Trent Williams. He's their uncle. She looked up, recognizing the irony in my voice. The same Trent Williams listed as the reporting party? I nodded. She made a note, her expression softening slightly. She had witnessed this before, family members weaponizing the system. But witnessing it didn't mean she could intervene. They assigned me to a cell with a woman named Diane, in her 50s, with a weathered face, serving 6 months for manufacturing meth. She took one look at me, still in my dress clothes from Emma's recital, and shook her head. First time, I nodded. What did they get you for? I explained about the hidden compartment, the substances I'd never seen, my brother who had been stalking me. Diane listened, then laughed bitterly. Hidden compartment you didn't know about. Classic plant job. Your brother's either clever or had assistants. Probably both. She elaborated on the method. Install the compartment when the target's absent. Load it up. Make an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. Police find the substances, and suddenly you're facing decades while the true culprit plays the victim. I've seen it countless times. Ex-husbands, business partners, family members. The system doesn't care who put it there. They care who owns the car. My first video visitation occurred the following morning. 15 minutes to see my children through a screen. But when the connection loaded, it wasn't just Emma and Jake. My parents sat behind them, and behind my parents, Trent, hovering, watching, ensuring I saw him. Mom spoke first. "Sarah, honey, perhaps this is for the best. Maybe jail will help you get clean. I'm not on substances, Mom. I've never." "Denial is part of addiction," she interrupted. "The counselors at Trent's rehab warned us about this." Trent leaned forward just enough for me to see his mouth. He mouthed 2 words, "Told you." Emma hadn't spoken since the arrest, my mother explained, only repeating tomorrow. Jake had resumed wetting the bed. They were staying with my parents temporarily while matters were resolved. The call concluded with Emma reaching for the screen, tears streaming down her face, still in her Annie costume because she refused to remove it. That afternoon, a guard delivered notice from my hospital, suspended without pay, effective immediately. The morals clause in my contract was unambiguous. Any arrest for substance-related charges meant automatic suspension pending investigation. No paycheck, no health insurance, no means to afford a competent lawyer. I calculated on the cell wall with a pencil stub, mortgage payment due in 2 weeks, car payment after that, utilities, Emma's dance classes, Jake's baseball league. Everything I'd built crumbling while I sat in an orange jumpsuit. The nursing board would be notified within 72 hours. Standard procedure for substance arrests. My license, 10 years of schooling, clinicals, continuing education, would be under review. Even if I beat the charges, the review process could take years. Years I'd spend unable to work in my profession. 3 days later, Child Protective Services arrived. A tired-looking woman with kind eyes and unwelcome news. Trent and my parents had filed for emergency custody. Given your current incarceration and the nature of the charges, the court is inclined to grant temporary custody to family members. Your brother has been especially proactive in ensuring the children's stability. Proactive. That's what they called it when someone dismantled your life, then volunteered to reassemble the fragments. He's an addict, I informed her. Check his record. Multiple arrests, failed rehabs. She flipped through her papers. Mr. Williams provided documentation of successful completion of a 90-day program. He's been clean for 4 months. Regular attendance at NA meetings. Employed full-time. Employed. Since when? Additionally, your parents are providing support. 2-parent household, stable income, clean background checks. I'm sorry, but from the court's perspective. She didn't need to finish. From the court's perspective, I was a substance dealer who had endangered children. Trent was a recovering addict making positive strides. The truth was irrelevant. My best friend Melissa visited that weekend. She had been crying. I could see it in her puffy eyes, the smeared mascara she'd attempted to fix in the parking lot. David says he can't have me associating with. She couldn't complete the sentence, but slipped me a folded paper. Trent has been inquiring about your computer passwords, bank accounts. I changed everything I could think of. The note listed every account she'd helped me secure. Email, banking, social media, even my Netflix password. At the bottom, she'd written, "He's using your kids to get people to talk. Says he needs access to help them. Don't trust anyone." The next blow came from the jail's law library computer during my allotted hour of access. My arrest had made the local news. Local nurse arrested in school substance bust. The article included my mugshot, hollow eyes, tangled hair, the last remnants of my recital makeup smeared across my face. The comment section was brutal. Parents from Emma's school demanded I stay away from their children. People I'd treated at the hospital expressed shock and disappointment. And there, with his real name and profile picture, Trent, praying for my sister's recovery and healing. Addiction is a disease. Our family won't give up on her. 47 likes, dozens of supportive replies. He had transformed my destruction into his redemption narrative. My public defender resigned the following week. She had been appointed to some federal case with actual prestige. Her replacement hadn't even reviewed my file. She called me Sandra for the entire meeting, shuffling through papers with confused frustration. "So, you're claiming someone planted these substances?" "Yes, my brother. He installed a hidden compartment." "Do you have proof? Receipts? Video footage? Witnesses?" I had nothing. Just the word of a suspected substance dealer against a recovering addict who had heroically stepped up to care for traumatized children. The CPS video interview with my kids unfolded exactly as Trent had planned. Emma, coached and bewildered, told the investigator that Mommy hides things in the car. When asked what kind of things, she shut down, reverting to her tomorrow refrain. But the damage was done. Jake tried to help, telling them about Uncle Trent visiting at night, coming by when I wasn't home. But the investigator focused on Emma's words, meticulously documenting them, while dismissing Jake's as inconsistent with the timeline. I began trading commissary for legal advice from a woman serving 5 years for fraud. She had been a paralegal before her arrest, knowing the system inside and out. Her assessment was grim. Family court moves swiftly, faster than criminal court. Your brother could have permanent custody before your trial even begins. And once they have custody for 6 months, it becomes the status quo. Judges don't like disrupting the status quo. I lay awake that night, calculating time. How long before temporary became permanent? How long before my children forgot what it felt like to have me tuck them in? How long before Trent's version of events became their truth? The answer arrived 2 weeks later when my parents visited. They brought papers, legal documents Trent had prepared with his new girlfriend, Amy, who was studying to be a paralegal. Just temporary guardianship, my mother assured me. For the children's stability, you understand? Behind her, my father stood silently, jaw clenched. He had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. When I refused to sign, his fist clenched as if he wanted to punch another wall. Be reasonable, Sarah. The kids need stability. They need normal, not a mother in jail. I didn't do this, Dad. You know me. You know I would never. I thought I knew you, he interrupted. But the daughter I raised wouldn't have substances in her car, wouldn't get arrested at her child's school, wouldn't put her babies through this trauma. They left the papers. Temporary guardianship, just until things were resolved. But I knew better. Nothing temporary remains temporary when you're battling the system from inside a cell. That night, the local Facebook mom group began sharing my mugshot. Warning, substance dealer nurse. Keep our schools safe. Protect our children. Each share, another nail in my reputation's coffin. Melissa texted me screenshots until her husband discovered it and made her block me. But it was Trent's comment that shattered me. As a recovering addict, I know how difficult it is to admit you need help. I'm praying my sister finds the strength to choose recovery. Her children deserve a healthy mother. Break the cycle. Recovery is possible. 134 likes, 62 shares. My destruction had become his platform. The next morning brought another blow. Notice from my mortgage company. The automatic payment had failed. My accounts were frozen as part of the asset investigation. A missed payment meant acceleration clause activation. 30 days to pay in full or face foreclosure. Trent posted Instagram stories from my house that afternoon. Maintaining Sissy's place for when she gets better. Family hope. He was in my kitchen using my dishes, sitting on my couch, moving his belongings in box by box while I sat in a cage. During transport to family court, I finally grasped the full extent of my predicament. The deputies gossiping in the front seat didn't realize I could hear them. Sheriff's taking it hard. That's his niece, the good one, right? The nurse. Yeah. Always said she was the only one who made something of herself. Now this. Trent seems to be doing better though. Saw him at the grocery store with those kids. Real sweet with them. My uncle, the sheriff, who could have helped, could have investigated, could have at least listened. But family was family, and I was now the family embarrassment, the cautionary tale, the good one gone bad. In family court, I appeared via video link, orange jumpsuit, shackled to the table, hair unwashed, no makeup, looking every bit the substance dealer they believed I was. Trent sat in the gallery in a clean button-down shirt, hands folded, the epitome of responsible recovery. His lawyer, not his girlfriend, but a genuine attorney he had somehow afforded, painted a beautiful picture. Recovering addict, for months clean, working full-time, providing a stable home for traumatized children. My parents testified on his behalf. Even Emma's principal submitted a letter supporting his custody petition. The judge's decision was swift. Temporary custody to Trent and my parents. Supervised visitation for me if and when I was released. Best interests of the children. I observed my brother's face as the judge spoke. No smirk, no gloating, just calm satisfaction. He had won, not through violence or threats, but through patience and meticulous planning. He had used my own virtues against me. My insistence on helping him recover, my trust that he'd never harm my children, my belief that family held significance. As they escorted me back to my cell, I recognized the truth. Trent hadn't merely stolen my grandmother's jewelry. He had stolen my entire existence. And he had executed it with such precision that everyone commended him for it. The system had functioned precisely as he had known it would. Good sister with no record versus recovering addict making positive changes. The narrative wrote itself. All he had to do was reverse our positions, and suddenly I was the antagonist in my own story. That night, Diane found me weeping on my bunk. She offered no comfort. Jail doesn't operate that way. But she did offer truth. First rule of frame jobs. The best ones make the victim appear guilty of precisely what they'd never do. Nurse with no substance history? Plant substances. Good mother? Make her seem dangerous to kids. Strong woman? Put her in a cage where strength is irrelevant. She was correct. Every strength I possessed, Trent had transformed into a weapon against me. My clean record made the arrest more shocking. My good reputation made the fall more dramatic. My love for my children made the separation more devastating. Question is, Diane continued, what are you going to do about it? You can sit here crying, or you can start fighting. But either way, those kids are growing up without you. Clock's ticking. I wiped my face on the rough pillowcase. She was right. The clock was ticking. Every day I spent in here was another day Trent solidified his position. Another day my children adapted to life without me. Another day my truth became less credible. I thought about Emma refusing to take off her Annie costume, singing about tomorrow, about Jake wetting the bed, insisting Uncle Trent visited at night, about my parents choosing to believe the convenient falsehood over the uncomfortable reality. Most of all, I thought about Trent sitting in my house, raising my children, playing the hero in the story where I was the villain. He had won this round so completely that people applauded him for it. But Diane was right about something else, too. The clock was ticking for him as well, because addicts don't remain sober when they achieve everything they desire. They stay sober when they're striving for something. And Trent had just acquired everything he'd been striving for. The counselors at rehab had warned about this, though not in the way my mother imagined. They had discussed environmental triggers, the peril of too much success too quickly, the fine line between recovery and relapse. I knew my brother, knew him better than anyone. He wasn't using when he planted those substances. He had been too meticulous, too precise. But now, with my house, my children, my parents' complete trust, with no one observing, no one suspecting, no one holding him accountable, the clock was ticking for both of us. The only question was which timer would expire first, his sobriety or my freedom. Trent launched his recovery blog the following Monday. Breaking the cycle, went live with a photo of him embracing Emma and Jake on my parents' front porch. The initial post detailed his journey from addiction to becoming a guardian angel for his nibblings, a term that made me physically ill. Within hours, sympathetic comments flooded in. Mothers praised his courage. Recovery groups shared his story. Someone initiated a GoFundMe for his legal expenses and protecting the children. Diane watched me refresh the page obsessively during computer time. She finally grasped my wrist, compelling me to look at her weathered face. Her cousin worked at the impound lot where my car had been towed. For $200 in commissary, he could inspect the hidden compartment for fingerprints, tool marks, anything the police might have overlooked. I agreed instantly, trading my phone privileges for ramen noodles and coffee packets. The video visitation that week shattered what little composure I had left. Trent positioned himself just outside the camera's view, but I could see his hand on Emma's shoulder. My daughter's eyes darted between the screen and something off camera as she asked why I had brought bad medicine to her play. The words emerged stilted, rehearsed. Jake sat silently, arms crossed, refusing to look at the screen at all. When the 15 minutes concluded, Emma pressed her small hand against the monitor, and I saw Trent's fingers tighten on her shoulder. My new reality struck during a meeting with my public defender. She discovered that all my jail calls were recorded. Standard procedure. But Trent's girlfriend, Amy, had submitted a records request as part of her paralegal studies. Every conversation where I discussed the setup, every strategy session with my lawyer, every desperate plea of innocence was now in Trent's possession. My defender suggested altering our approach, but what was the point? He knew everything. Diane's cousin reported back 3 days later. The hidden compartment displayed clear tool marks indicating recent installation, scratches in the metal, fresh drill shavings. However, the police hadn't photographed those details during their initial search. Worse, multiple investigators had contaminated the scene, rendering any evidence legally questionable. Still, it was something. Proof that the compartment wasn't factory installed, that someone had modified my car. Family court issued new orders that felt like punishment disguised as procedure. Before any visitation could resume, I had to complete parenting classes and substance counseling. The catch? Jail only offered these programs to sentenced inmates, not pretrial detainees. I was ensnared in a bureaucratic nightmare, unable to meet requirements that were impossible to fulfill from my current position. The next blow arrived through Melissa, who risked her marriage to visit again. Trent had accessed Emma's college fund as her temporary guardian. $5,000 withdrawn for trauma counseling, with someone who turned out to be Amy's friend, a self-proclaimed life coach with no actual credentials. Legal? Yes. Devastating? Absolutely. I had saved that money since Emma was born. $20 here, $50 there, building her future one deposit at a time. Local news ran a feel-good segment about recovery and redemption. There was Trent at a charity 5K wearing a custom shirt featuring my children's faces and running for their future printed across the back. The reporter lauded his dedication to breaking generational cycles of addiction. I watched from the dayroom television as my brother crossed the finish line, Emma and Jake cheering him on. Other inmates changed the channel, but the damage was done. My latest public defender, the third one, found a discrepancy in the prosecutor's case. The substance weight didn't align with trafficking charges. It was barely over possession limits. She suggested pleading down to simple possession, time served, probation. But any substance conviction meant permanently losing my nursing license. It meant Trent retaining custody. It meant admitting to something I didn't do. Mandatory group therapy became another form of torment. Sitting in a circle with actual addicts, listening to their stories while maintaining my innocence. The counselor took notes every time I spoke, writing denial and lack of accountability in a file that would follow me through the system. Truth sounded precisely like lies in that room. Every protest of innocence was just another symptom of addiction. Trent brought the children for what he termed a closure visit. Emma wore clothes I didn't recognize, designer labels I'd never buy. Both children referred to Amy as Miss Amy with genuine affection. She had braided Emma's hair in a style I'd tried and failed to master. Jake showed me his new baseball glove, expensive leather that smelled of privilege. They talked about their new routines, Amy's cooking, trips to places I'd always promised but could never afford. My children were becoming strangers, and Trent ensured I witnessed every painful detail. My father visited alone the following week. He looked shattered, aged beyond his years. He admitted knowing Trent was using again, finding needles in the bathroom, noticing money missing from his wallet. But at least Trent was functional, he reasoned. At least the kids had stability. He implored me to accept a plea deal, to cease fighting what everyone already believed. The man who had once punched walls in my defense now wanted me to surrender. Even my commissary account became a battleground. Funds deposited by Melissa mysteriously vanished. An investigation revealed Trent had listed himself as an approved visitor and family member, granting him access to my account. He had systematically drained it, leaving me unable to purchase basic hygiene products. The jail's response was a shrug. Family members possess those rights. The foreclosure notice arrived like a final indignity. Local news covered the auction of my house, interviewing Trent about his efforts to save the family home despite his sister's choices. He stood on my front lawn, looking appropriately sorrowful, explaining how addiction destroyed families. Behind him, I could see my rose bushes dying from neglect. Brenda, my former colleague, risked her job to visit with disturbing news. The hospital had hired Trent for night custodial work. He now had access to medical records, controlled substance disposal areas, and the same corridors where I'd built my career. She had caught him asking questions about ketamine disposal procedures, anesthesia cart codes. The implications terrified us both. Diane revealed she had recorded Trent purchasing from her dealer 6 weeks before my arrest. The video was clear, his face, his voice, the transaction. But it also showed Diane dealing, rendering it legally inadmissible. Evidence that could free me would imprison her. She offered it anyway, understanding what it might cost her. I couldn't accept that sacrifice. A private investigator hired by Melissa's husband uncovered something significant. Trent had been using my nursing license number to call in prescriptions. The DEA database showed suspicious patterns, controlled substances prescribed to patients I'd never treated, identity theft on top of everything else. But reporting it meant initiating a federal investigation that could take years. My uncle finally visited alone. After hours, he looked older, shoulders bowed with shame. He had suspected Trent from the beginning, but couldn't investigate family. Now, he offered to pay for a private attorney if I agreed to leave town after an acquittal. The good apple of the family tree would need to disappear to preserve what remained of our reputation. I agreed. What alternative did I have? Emma's teacher contacted CPS with concerns that made my heart pound. My daughter had drawn pictures during art class, crude images of Uncle Trent's secret box in Mommy's car. But the investigator dismissed them as trauma responses, children processing difficult emotions through art. Truth from the mouth of babes, ignored by adults who believed they knew better. The private attorney my uncle hired brought both hope and devastating reality. Trent's public sympathy campaign had contaminated the jury pool. Everyone knew the story of the heroic recovering addict, saving his sister's children. She suggested requesting a bench trial with a judge who had discretion on mandatory minimums. It meant placing my fate in one person's hands instead of 12. I crossed ethical lines I never thought I would. During a literacy program, I befriended the coordinator whose daughter was in Emma's class. Technically, this violated the no-contact order, but I was desperate for information about my children. Through her, I learned Emma had stopped singing entirely. No more tomorrow. No more anything. The music had died with her mother's arrest. During transport for attorney meetings, I recognized the bailiff. Marcus Chun had been Trent's dealer in high school, now 10 years clean and working courthouse security. He pulled me aside in the holding area, whispering that Trent had attempted to buy from him last month. Trent knew his history, knew his triggers, tried to exploit them. Marcus couldn't testify, it would cost him his job, but he wanted me to know the truth. The attorney subpoenaed pharmacy records that painted a damning picture. Trent had filled prescriptions using my DEA number the week before my arrest, establishing a paper trail of identity theft. But the prosecutor argued this was separate from the substance charges, relevant to motive, but not proof of planting evidence. The system compartmentalized crimes like it compartmentalized lives. Amy's pregnancy announcement during family court proceedings felt like a calculated blow. She stood before the judge, hand on her still flat stomach, discussing providing a stable two-parent home for all the children. Trent wiped away tears that might have been genuine. The judge extended temporary custody, moved by the touching display of family planning. I missed Emma's 7th birthday from my jail cell. Trent live-streamed the party at Chuck E. Cheese, a place I'd never been able to afford. Emma blew out candles without looking at the camera, her face a mask of forced happiness. The other parents smiled and clapped, probably relieved this substance dealer mother wasn't there to ruin the celebration. Jake sat in the corner, arms crossed, refusing to participate. The work release program offered cruel hope. I could leave jail to clean offices at night, earning money for legal fees. The location, my former hospital. The universe's sick joke meant I'd mop floors in the pediatric ward where I'd once saved lives, scrubbing toilets in the break room where colleagues had thrown me a baby shower for Jake. My supervisor was a parent from Emma's school who treated me like something scraped off her shoe. She assigned me the worst tasks, made me clean the same areas repeatedly, always finding fault. One night, she forced me to clean the trauma bay where I'd once let a code that saved a child's life. The plaque on the wall still thanked the nursing team. My name had been covered with tape. Brenda slipped me notes during my shifts, risking everything to keep me informed. Trent had been asking about controlled substance disposal, particularly ketamine and fentanyl. He'd befriended nurses on the night shift, using his recovery story to gain sympathy and access. The pattern was clear. He was escalating beyond pills, planning something more significant. The choice that haunted me came on a Thursday night. During my shift, I discovered Trent in a restricted area, pocketing expired medications from the disposal bin. Security cameras would have caught him, but reporting it meant violating my work release terms, protecting future victims, or helping my children. An impossible decision. I walked away, hating myself with each step. Jake's counselor filed a report that should have changed everything. My son insisted repeatedly that Uncle Trent had put something in Mommy's car, providing consistent details about timing and location. But Trent produced a therapist's note from Amy's life coach friend, stating Jake was experiencing false memories due to trauma. A 9-year-old's truth buried under professional-sounding lies. My substance test came back positive for a substance I'd never heard of. The levels were consistent with recent ingestion, not long-term use. Diane figured it out first. Trent had connections in the jail kitchen through Amy's network. He'd been dosing my food, ensuring I'd fail any test, providing more evidence of my addiction. Even in jail, I wasn't safe from his reach. The private investigator uncovered Trent's practice run. His college roommate, expelled for substances Trent planted, now lived under a bridge in Portland. Unreachable, unverifiable, but part of a clear pattern. This wasn't his first frame job, just his most elaborate. But patterns weren't proof, and the roommate couldn't testify from wherever addiction had taken him. The judge accelerated my trial date, citing public interest and children's welfare. 2 weeks to prepare instead of 2 months. My attorney scrambled to organize witnesses, gather evidence, build a defense against charges that shouldn't exist. The speed that usually aided defendants now worked against me. Trent had planned for this, too. His true objective surfaced during a meeting with my attorney. Hidden in family court documents was a petition for adoption. If I remained incarcerated for 1 year, abandonment laws would activate. Trent wasn't just seeking temporary custody. He planned to erase me as their mother entirely. The papers were already drafted, awaiting the passage of time. The twisted logic emerged through his blog posts. Trent genuinely believed he was saving my children from addict genes, protecting them from ending up like him or like me. In his distorted view, he had convinced himself that destroying me was an act of love, breaking the cycle by breaking me. The scariest part, his tears during court appearances were real. I made a desperate decision that violated every ethical boundary I had left. Through Diane's connections, we arranged to search Trent's apartment during Emma's school recital. Her crew found his stash, not just pills, but harder substances, enough to send him away for years. But we couldn't report it without implicating ourselves in breaking and entering. Evidence that could save me would destroy me differently. To establish an alibi for the apartment search, I had to miss my video call with the children. Emma waited by the computer for 2 hours. According to the guard who finally disconnected the unused session, she'd prepared a song to sing for me. Not tomorrow, something new from school. I traded possible evidence for definite heartbreak. The search revealed receipts for the compartment installation in my car. The shop owner's name was familiar. Trent's old dealer, someone who'd do anything for the right price. But he wouldn't testify without immunity, and the prosecutor wasn't interested in deals that complicated their simple case. Substance dealer mother was an easier story than an elaborate frame job. Character witnesses became a battlefield of their own. 3 hospital colleagues agreed to testify about my professional reputation, my dedication, my complete lack of substance history. But the 4th backed out after Trent implied he knew about her past prescription discrepancy, something she'd confided only to me during a vulnerable moment. He had weaponized every trust I'd ever built. The judge ordered hair follicle tests for all parties in the custody case. The results confirmed what I'd always known. I showed no signs of long-term substance use. But the judge noted that single use was still illegal, that good people sometimes made bad choices. Legal innocence and actual innocence were distinct, and I was learning the distinction painfully. My attorney called in a favor from a DEA contact who confirmed the prescription fraud pattern matched Trent's timeline perfectly. But testifying would open a federal investigation that could take years, during which my children would grow up without me. Help that couldn't help. Truth that couldn't be spoken. The system's cruel mathematics. Off the record, the DEA contact revealed something chilling. Trent's fraudulent prescriptions had gone to elderly hospice patients who died before anyone noticed. He'd been using deceased individuals' identities for months, technically making him a serial killer of convenience. But proving it required resources I didn't possess, connections I couldn't forge from jail. Emma broke during her forensic interview, blurting out that Uncle Trent had shown her the box in Mommy's car before the play. For a moment, truth shone through. Then, immediately, she recanted, stating she made it up for attention. The investigator noted both statements, but emphasized the recantation. Even my daughter's honesty had been twisted into lies. The compartment installer came forward after his own arrest on unrelated charges. He admitted Trent paid cash for the installation a week before my arrest, providing receipts and detailed testimony. But his cooperation came at a price. He had to testify about all his illegal modifications, implicating dozens of other clients who now desired my demise for exposing their secrets. I made the hardest decision of my life. During a strategy meeting with my attorney, I agreed to testify about finding Trent stealing from the hospital, knowing it violated my work release terms. The truth had become more paramount than strategy. If I was going down, I'd go down fighting, giving the jury every piece of truth I could. Trent visited the jail the night before trial, carrying a letter of forgiveness and power of attorney papers. He promised to drop the adoption pursuit if I accepted a plea deal. 18 months, out in 12 with good behavior. His hands trembled as he pushed the papers through the slot. The security footage clearly showed his dilated pupils, the tremor in his fingers. He was using heavily again, but no one seemed to notice the obvious signs. I looked him in the eye and spoke clearly for the cameras. I would rather lose my children forever as an innocent woman than keep them through a lie. His face crumpled, not with victory, but with genuine confusion. He had never imagined I wouldn't break, wouldn't fold, wouldn't take the easy path that confirmed his narrative. Trial began with the prosecutor portraying me as a nurse who had exploited medical knowledge for substance theft. Trent sat directly behind the prosecutor's table, wearing a suit I recognized from my father's closet, playing the victim advocate to perfection. The gallery was divided. My supporters on the left, Trent's army of recovery advocates and concerned parents on the right. Both of us displayed our battle scars. I had lost 30 pounds, my hair showing gray I'd never noticed before. Trent had gained weight, developed a tremor he tried to conceal by clasping his hands. We were destroying each other in slow motion, and everyone watched as if it were entertainment. The installer took the stand and testified that Trent had specifically requested an undetectable compartment for storing a girlfriend's birthday surprise. The lie was so transparent that several jury members shifted uncomfortably, but obvious lies weren't proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Then came the bailiff I'd recognized, Marcus Chun. He broke courtroom protocol, standing up in the gallery to speak without being called. He couldn't remain silent anymore, he stated. 10 years clean, and Trent had tried to drag him back down. The judge threatened contempt, but Marcus continued. Trent knew every dealer in town, every weakness, every trigger. He was a predator disguised as prey. The judge ordered hair follicle tests for everyone involved in the family court matter, including Trent. His panic was visible, sweating, fidgeting, suddenly needing bathroom breaks. The test would reveal everything, and he knew it. But the criminal trial would conclude before those results returned. Hospital security footage was authenticated and entered into evidence. It showed Trent entering restricted areas during my shifts, creating opportunity for the prescription theft. Circumstantial but compelling, the prosecutor admitted. Patterns emerged like a picture from scattered pixels. Access, opportunity, motive, method, everything building to Trent's testimony. He took the stand and broke down completely, admitting to the prescription theft, but swearing he'd never planted substances. His tears seemed genuine as he spoke about trying to save me from myself, protecting the children from our family curse. He was an addict, but not a monster, he insisted. Even I almost believed him. During jury deliberation, the prosecutor offered one final deal. Drop all charges if I agreed to supervised visitation only. No admission of guilt, but acceptance of consequences. My attorney advised taking it. Juries were unpredictable, and we presented reasonable doubt, but not certainty. I refused. My children deserved a mother who fought for truth until the end. Either I'd walk out vindicated or go to prison knowing I'd never compromised. The jury returned after 2 hours of deliberation. The verdict split like my life had split. Not guilty on trafficking. The evidence was too thin, the compartment too suspicious. But guilty on possession, because the substances were in my car, and constructive possession was still possession. Time served plus 2 years probation. A partial victory that felt like defeat. Family court moved immediately. Trent's custody was revoked based on his failed substance test and admitted prescription theft. But the children went to my parents, not to me. The judge cited my criminal conviction, my need to rebuild, the children's need for stability. No one won cleanly. I moved in with Melissa, whose husband had left her for supporting me. We rebuilt together, 2 women whose loyalty to truth had cost them everything. My nursing license was suspended pending review, a process that would take years. I found work as a medical clerk, filing papers where I'd once saved lives. Supervised Sunday visits became my lifeline. Emma spoke again, but flinched at sirens. Jake refused to visit Trent at all, carrying anger like armor. My mother, now in a wheelchair from her stroke, still defended Trent from her assisted living facility. The family tree we'd all been so proud of was nothing but broken branches. 6 months later, I sat in another courtroom for the final custody hearing. Trent was back in rehab, court-ordered this time. His girlfriend Amy had left him when the baby tested positive for substances at birth. The family court judge reviewed everything. My compliance, my job stability, my clean substance tests, my completed parenting classes, joint custody with my parents, supervised transitions, substance testing for all parties. Emma's college fund was restored by court order. It wasn't the life I'd built before, but it was something. Trent would receive supervised visitation when he completed treatment again. I drove past my foreclosed house every day on the way to work. A new family, new rose bushes, new life inside those walls. Sometimes I parked across the street, remembering birthday parties and bedtime stories, Christmas mornings, and homework battles. The GPS still called it home. Emma asked me once if I hated Uncle Trent. I told her the truth. I hated what he did, but couldn't hate him. He was sick in ways that medicine couldn't fix, broken in places that love couldn't reach. We were all just trying to survive our family curse in different ways. The last time I saw him was at the courthouse, signing papers to garnish his wages for child support. He looked smaller, deflated, like a balloon slowly losing air. He asked if I thought he'd ever improve. I didn't have an answer. Some cycles break you before you break them. But every Sunday, I picked up my children for our allotted hours. We went to parks, museums, anywhere that didn't remind us of before. Emma started singing again. Not Tomorrow, but new songs, happier ones. Jake joined Little League with a used glove that smelled of hope instead of privilege.